Biondi. Brantley.
Here.
Gebhardt.
Here.
Keim. Here. Slaughter.
Here.
5 present.
Madam City Clerk, since we took the roll call before we had the, are we good? Okay,
Yes,
we're
yes,
good.
Chair. But,
Okay.
Chair, pardon me, we still would like to take the vote for remote
Okay.
participation.
Commissioner Brantley asked to be present remotely. Can we do this as an all in favor? Yeah, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's see. I would like to show that our council liaison, Bobby Welsh, is here today, and he will be in attendance. And also, somewhere in the audience is our alternate. There he is, back there, Mr. Stanky. Okay. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda as presented unless someone has a request to amend it? I need a motion.
I'll make a motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, next. I need a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carried. We also need a motion, Nope, we don't. Mistake. All right, citizens input time. Input of citizens on matters concerning the City of Cape Coral CRA. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak? Seeing none, we'll move on. Citizens input is closed. We have one item to consider under business consent agenda. The CRA resolution amends the CRA resolution 3-23, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2024, beginning October 1st and ending September 30th, 2024. We'll now turn the floor over to staff.
Good afternoon, everyone. Nicole Reitler, Budget Administrator for the city. Once we get the presentation up, I'll walk through it. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Today we're just going to walk through the changes to your fiscal year 2024 budget that you previously already approved. As you can see, our tax values came in higher than we expected, than we had originally forecasted. So the changes to today's 2024 budget reflect those changes. We did have an increase in tax values in your tax revenues. So with that, we're bringing in an additional $1.255 million in revenue. Just to be mindful that this increase is not finalized until the tax increment from the county might be adjusted, depending on when they adopt their final millage rate. So our original revenues planned were $4.6 million, and now we're expecting $5.9 million in tax increment revenue. What we show here is your fiscal year 2024 through 2028 proposed budgets. Originally, we had $5 million in 2025. We now have $6.1 million, so we did carry those forecasted increases forward in future years so we could plan better. And with the $1.2 million extra, we do recommend that we put those funds to the existing business incentives or your economic incentives for the upcoming fiscal year 2024. Originally, we had $545,000 put in there. Once we add in this, you'll be at $1.7 million that they can use for any of the economic incentives that they have planned, all encompassing of what they wanted to do in 2024. Any questions?
So I was watching the news today and I'm kind of confused because I know we were going to limit to $50,000 and then they said something, but we could do 75. And I think that was the first I had heard of it. I'm not sure. Is that where that money is going to go? I'm not sure.
The total line includes everything with the $50,000. As far as how they plan to spend it will be determined on the program, but that is all in the same account string, same line.
So my question is there a possibility that we can give 75 versus the 50?
I believe I can do the higher values, yes.
Go ahead.
So we've got the budget, and then we have the individual grant awards.
Okay.
This discussion is at a much higher level, a little less granular than your question is, a little more granular on how we're going to award the money that you allocate. So what we're asking for you all to do is with this extra money, allocate it to the incentive bucket. And then within that incentive bucket, we have several different type of grant programs. And then within each one of those grant programs, there's limits to the amount of award. And so we could go to 75 if that's if the board's wishes to increase the individual award amounts, we could do that.
I was
But we
just
need-
asking
we
'cause I
need
saw
mon-
the
We need
news.
money in the bucket, in the incentive bucket to actually be able to award those monies. And so what we're saying is, with this little bit of extra money we have, we would like to put it in that incentive bucket so that we could either, one, give out more awards than what we could fund under 500,000, or we can give out the same amount of awards, just higher. So that's another discussion we can have, but we're just asking you to amend what you had previously adopted within your budget to take this extra additional revenue and basically put it out there for the private sector to do more with.
Okay.
But we can definitely have that discussion about the individual awards.
I just never heard that figure before until today, so that's why I'm asking.
I think I don't know what you heard today, but we are bringing you 9B, later on in the agenda is a demolition incentive program, and we'll discuss the details of that in more detail then, but we have a kind of a base amount up to a certain, like 100% reimbursement up to 50,000, and then we had a shared incentive, basically between 50 and 100,000. So for example, if you had a $23,000 demolition, it would be an award of 23,000. If you had a 50,000 or all the way up to 50, it would be 100% match or 100% award. It wouldn't be a match. It would just be, we would just help get it down. Once you go over 50,000, we had a 50% allocation up to 100,000. So that extra 50 at 50% is 25. Add that to the 50, that's where you get to the 75. That's our recommendation. It hasn't been discussed or approved, but that's where the media probably picked up on up to 75,000.
All right, thank you for clarifying.
Yep.
Quick question on what you're talking about. If we're helping businesses and by giving them this incentive, do we have any monetary limits for them? Like if their business it's a little ice cream store and it's not like a big cove on 47th, how are we divvying up this money? How are we stating that, 3 buildings could be torn down because you owe them or you own them as opposed to a little ice cream shop? How are we going to divvy that up? That was just,
Could I ask for just to redirect the board a little bit? Can we hold this discussion for that item? And then this is just to help figure out what our recommendation on this additional TIF revenue is to put it in the incentives. Okay. And then so if you agree with that, okay. If not, we can have a discussion. But we will definitely answer all these questions about the incentive program under 9B.
anybody else have any questions? All right. We need to vote.
Yeah, it's all incentives.
Approve item 7A, resolution 5-23, which will amend GRA resolution 3-23, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2024, beginning on
Motion.
Second.
I just want to clarify for the board, so this, putting it in the incentive pot, it applies to all incentives, so not just, this is not like we're taking this $1 million plus for just demolition. This would be for any TIF incentives that we are able to give back for bigger and better developments, the Breaking Barriers to Business grant program, this grant program, any type of the facade so this money is now going to be additional funding for all of our programs, not just the one that's on the agenda tonight.
Any other discussion? Madam City Clerk, call the roll, please.
Biondi,
Aye.
Brantley,
Aye.
Gebhardt,
Aye.
Hines,
Aye.
Slaughter,
Aye.
5 ayes, motion carried.
Thank you. And we move on to item number 8, unfinished business, the clock location. Staff, please.
Good afternoon, Percy Zambrano, Interim Public Works Director. So this is just to promote discussion among the board and we're trying to get consensus where you would like us to relocate the clock. So as you know, the cost to get a new one is $34,310, and it will take between 45 to 60 days to deliver. We have the funding allocated. We just need to issue the PO once we're ready. So we're going to bounce around 7 proposed locations, but feel free to come up with your own. So the first one, of course, the previous location is where it was hit by a vehicle, and I have to warn you that this median is going to be subject to reconfiguration as part of the bridge, which is a presentation for the agenda today. But of course, it can go back there. It will take about good 4 or 5 years to have the bridge construction going through, so you get 5 years of the clock being posted there. The other one is in the Big John Plaza. You know, that's an icon for the city. Club Square could be a location. There is the recent landscape area there and the flag, so that could be another potential location. The transfer station is where the clock was originally located way back in the day. And then it was relocated at the intersection of Cape Coral Parkway and Del Prado. Founders Park could be an option. And Bernice Braden Park at the entrance of at the foot of the bridge by the, we were bouncing around where you have the entry features. And finally, for Freedoms Park could be another location for the clock. So with that, you know, I'll open for discussion.
Go ahead.
I feel that we should table this motion because of the bridge and everything. It's not of any historic value. So I don't see us doing anything at this point in time. I don't know if we need a motion or not for me to say that. But I, at this time, just feel that the clock is not part of our history and there's no urgency to get it done. And with the one picture, I think it was at Braden Park, I don't even think that's in the CRA. Is it?
Some of it.
But I really think with the construction going on and everything else that
It is part of the CRA.
I was always taught to spend money like it's my own money, and if anybody knows me, I'm the coupon queen. So I think it was like $34,000 or whatever, but to me, that could be my salary for a year, just saying. So that's, I could make that a motion that.
I was going to ask jokingly, is that a motion? Because I'll second it. And I feel the same way, similar. I'm not opposed to the clock. It represents a different heritage, and more importantly, we don't even have established design guidelines that we would, if we were going to build a new clock today and say, what do we want it to look like? Where do we want it to go? How will it be used?
I keep thinking what Greg said at the last meeting, that young people today don't even know how to read a clock. Which kind of makes sense.
if I could weigh in,
Yes, go ahead, Jim.
my preference would be to see it go back where it was at some point, but it makes no sense to do that until all the construction's completed. So I join Janice's thought in wanting to postpone this or table it until the construction's completed. I would rather see the clock greet people as they come into Cape Coral, which is what it did before, but there's nothing we can do about that right now that isn't gonna cause a problem with the construction.
Has the clock already been ordered?
Mercedes,
I'm
have you
sorry.
ordered the clock
No,
yet?
no.
Okay. If I may, I like the clock. I know I'm kind of a history buff. I'm on the board of directors for the History Museum. I like the idea that we have the clock. I don't think it belongs on the bridge because the bridge is that'll be construction all over the place. I don't think it should go in Founders Park. I thought I would like it there, but I don't because nobody will see it. Nobody will see it at the Bernie Braden Park. If we want to table this, then let's table it for now and address it later. Or we could say, let's just forget the clock and take that $34,000 and use it elsewhere. We can do that too. But if that's what we're going to do, we'll need a motion. Anyone else? Go ahead, Janice.
I was just gonna say, I'd make the motion to either table it till after construction's done, or just not do the clock anymore. Either way, I'm good with. I know, so I don't know. I
One or
need
the other.
input from them. I'll make a motion.
From point of order, if we were going to not table it, but just drop it, what prevents us from picking it back up at a later point? You have an ability to spend funds.
You don't have a resolution in front of you, you don't have an there's nothing in front of you right now except a discussion. So basically, you'll be doing a motion to determine what you want to do. And as you just said, yes, if you just want to not do anything right now and wait, you can do that. So,
Okay, so I'll make a motion to eliminate the clock altogether.
Second.
Madam City Clerk, call the roll, please.
Biondi,
Hesitantly, aye.
Brantley,
Opposed.
What do you say?
I don't know.
opposed, so no. I thought he said not voting. No, he said I'm
Commissioner
opposing.
Brantley, can you repeat your vote, please?
No.
Gebhardt,
No.
Keim,
Aye.
Slaughter,
Yes.
3 ayes, 2 nays, motion carried.
Okay, moving along to Christmas decorations, item 8B.
Good afternoon, Percy Zambrano, Interim Public Works Director. So this is an informational item that we want to keep you in the loop. In fiscal year 2023, you allocated $156,000 for Christmas decorations. So as you know, they were damaged, the electrical connection were damaged as part of the hurricane. So we are in-house staff already removed the Christmas decorations from 47th. Now we're moving to the other area on Cape Coral Parkway. So after that, we're gonna be rewiring the electricals. We need some outside help with some of the work that we're gonna be doing with the electrical connections on the medians. But the plan is to have everything ready and functional by November, okay? So that's the plan, and we wanted to give you an update in that regard. The decoration has been ordered, and everything is moving along.
Okay.
Any questions?
I just, sorry. Can we just say holiday decorations? Because I think you do have a variety. It's not just all Christmas, right?
That is correct.
Do we need a motion on any of this? That was just
No, this is
informative.
informational.
Correct, okay. All right, we will move right along then to item 9A.
Okay, before we move on, can I raise one other issue under unfinished business?
All right, Jim, when you speak, it's hard because there's something that's going on in the background. Maybe you're too close to the mic. So if you could speak a little slower so we get everything you say, sorry. Okay, what did you ask?
If I could add an item under unfinished business.
Sure.
I just wanted an update on where the project stands down at Bimini.
Can't hear.
Never mind, just move on.
I think they're going to present something about the projects that they're working on. They gave us a whole package, but you didn't get it, I don't think. It's a project report update. So would that satisfy you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Okay, moving along now. Item 9A, special event sponsorship application approval. On to staff. Anybody have anything?
So in the backup, there are three applications, one from Shia, one from Pride, and one from Rotary regarding the Shia event was the Spooktacular Drink or Treat. Number 2 was the annual Pride of Cape Coral. And, I'm sorry, number 2 was that. Number 3 was the Rotary Club's 39th Cape Coral Art Festival and Marketplace.
Any discussion on any of these?
If you don't mind, Chair, I provided some information for the board I'd like to go over.
Okay, thank you,
So-
Liaison Welsh.
So I provided all of you with a topic of discussion that we had at our workshop meeting. And I believe at the end of the staple paper that I gave you, it has a statement by me that says, I did not hear that everyone concluded that they wanted to preclude ticketed events. And also above it, it shows that Interim Director Ilchism would bring back an amended policy that has grant applications 2 times a year, which is what we have, and one that precluded special events charging admission. So I don't know if we received that or if we want to continue discussion on that before approving or potentially approving an event that we have an application here for that I do know in fact charges admission and is for 21 and up only. So I would like the board to have some discussion on that before voting on these 3. The second piece of paper that I gave you, which is the single sheet, is something to think about that shows potentially instead of the request of sponsoring the trolleys, that maybe if the CRA wants to still help sponsor the event, that they could potentially sponsor giveaways or the photographer or something like that, that would add the CRA logo to it instead of being responsible for the trolleys at that event. Just knowing where we were at that workshop meeting and knowing that this is only a 2 time a year that you can ask for sponsorships, I was just hoping to get some discussion on you guys on this before going forward. Thank you.
If I may, the rules that we decided on for this grant program, the sponsorship program, it's that a special event is defined as a new or existing organized concert, exhibition, festival, carnival, athletic event, craft show, competition, parade, celebration, market, or any event similar in nature which is open to the public without age restriction. And I think if we're going to adhere to our rules, I don't think we have the capability, unless we want to change the rules, to approve grants for the trolleys. if anybody really wants to help Shia to bring people onto these trolley events, then I think perhaps you're correct, Bobby, that we should, or we could, help with the police presence, help with, let's see, what other items? Some giveaways or printed material, that kind of thing. But I don't think everybody cannot go on the trolley. They're not, I don't think they're handicap accessible. I could be wrong. But I think we have to be careful, because if we do that, then I don't know what else we're going to approve, you know? If we approve that, then we're going to have to approve every trolley event. So I think we need to have discussion, and then we need to make a decision.
I agree with you. We've already decided that without age restrictions, and we all know the trolley you have to be a certain age to participate on that. I don't have a problem supporting like the Shia Easter egg hunt. I do not have a problem doing the trick or treat that they've done in the past during the day with the children in South Cape. I would much rather support those events that are family oriented, that are free to the public, all ages can attend. And it just says right here, you just read it, without age restrictions. So we would have to go back and change the rules that we've already established. And I don't think that we should, personally.
Yeah, and I think, I'm pretty sure I was in the minority before, and I think I still am, but I don't think we should necessarily, call off the events because of age restrictions. If there were, the trick-or-treating events you're talking about, Easter egg hunt, if a bunch of adults showed up for that, it would be kind of weird. So I think they're kind of, they are geared towards a specific demographic age-wise. So I don't think that it's necessarily, against what we're saying if we do one that's 21 and up as well, because there are the younger age ones too.
Yes, were we expecting any presentation from Shia, Pride, or Rotary? No, that's why I'm asking, simply because if there's certain questions that are specific to a event, you should probably talk to that event.
Do you have a specific question?
Well, the question was, beyond the trolleys, what happens at this event that might not just be limited to trolley activity? Because I think I'm kind of caught between, I don't have a problem with trolley, but clearly our language says the age restriction, and if I'm going to do pub crawl, they got to be 21.
Right, they have to be 21.
But are there other activities that go beyond just the trolley?
Well, the trolley goes to the different establishments along the route, A. Each establishment gives a drink and a snack, correct? Appetizers and a little drink. And it's a ticketed event. It's a ticketed event. So it's going to depend on what we're thinking. And I think what we agreed to prior to today, we need to really think about what we're doing and how we're doing it in order to adhere to our own rules. My second question is, if we have these rules, this application should have never made it to us. It should have stopped at staff when they get the application to say, this one doesn't apply, and put it over here. And maybe we could have use of it for, information only. They're asking for help, what can we do? But it shouldn't have come to us as a vote, because they should have screened these, and we could go on from there. But that's just my opinion. We have to discuss that too. Hi there.
Hi, I'm sorry. I'm Shannon. I'm with Shia. I just wanted to let you know you guys approved this exact sponsorship for 2023 or 2022. The reason we were unable to use it and were asked to renew it was because of the hurricane. And so we decided to cancel the event at that time, since the city, the lighting, and obviously most of the participating locations were unable to move forward with it. Just so you know, in terms of when you're talking about the rules, at one point in time it was approved.
I think we may have changed the rules more recently than when we approved your grant for 2022. Anyone have anything else? We need more discussion. Yes, Mike?
I don't know, can you see the light up there when I push the button?
Oh,
I don't know.
we
if
never had this
you have to-
before.
I don't know if it works. Otherwise, I'll just keep putting my hand up. That's fine.
I see you, you're right there. We never had lights before. This is very exciting.
It helps maintain order. But let me, can I shed some light on the?
Sure.
So in May, the board did approve the revised application process that Councilmember Welsh brought forward. And in those, exactly the language that was in there, there were two criterias that you all wanted in the new application process, which is it had to be open to the public and it had to have no age restrictions. So I'm hearing the board loud and clear right now. You all are clearly signaling to us that you're looking at an age restriction of 21 and above being the applicant setting the age restriction. The way we viewed that, and I understand now it's different than the way you intended on it being written, is they can't allow an 18-year-older to consume alcohol. They're allowing everyone who is overage to attend this event and participate. So we viewed it as they're following the state and federal law. We can't do anything underneath that would go against that. So they've said anybody who meets the criteria to be here can attend, and there's no restrictions on at 25 and above or 21 through 50. It's no restrictions on age other than what is set by federal law, and it's open to the public. So that's why it got through our screening. If I'm hearing, well, I know two of you very clearly said 21 and above for you is considered a restriction, but we looked at that as them just complying with the law. So if the intent for you all clearly is it has to be an event that, let's say they modified it and there is a 17-year-old that goes to the event, they still can't consume alcohol, right? That's a federal law. So I think some discussion on this is probably warranted, because then it would allow Shia to understand what type of event or how to market it, because maybe they would consider allowing people on the trolley whether or not they could consume alcohol or not.
We don't participate in these events very often. I think like one a year we max do, and there is a separate, I don't know if it's free or not, but there are people that don't drink that do the event too.
Right, they get a special ticket. It's the designated driver ticket,
Yes.
and that's what they get. It's a cheaper ticket. And no, they don't drink, but I still think they're old enough to be out with everybody.
Yeah.
If I can weigh in, is this any better, or is the audio still
Oh,
bad?
it's much better, Mr. Brantley. Go ahead.
Okay, based on what Greg had said, he gave me food for thought that I had not had when we discussed the rules previously. So I think generally it would be worth us revisiting those rules for the future. The other thing I'd like to say is that if this is a reapplication for an event that we previously approved that was interrupted by the hurricane, then I might feel differently about this particular occurrence. And that would give us time to revisit the rules. Just a thought.
Yeah, I also tend to agree with that, because when about a year ago, it might have been a little longer, there was some discussion, and my comment was simply, whatever the rules are, establish them, but you got to ring the bell. You've got to let people know. You've got to be transparent. And in this case, what's really interesting is when you look at it, and Brian, I don't want you to get nervous, but you go, well, defined as a new or existing event, as Mr. Brantley said, this not only was an existing event, it would have happened under our prior approval if not for a hurricane taking that out. So then in the interim, as the city manager indicated, you then had a rule change that some suspect would have invalidated. Others were now realizing, yeah, reasonable people can interpret. So that kind of changes not only my thinking, because I appreciate Commissioner Welsh's comments, or Council Members Welsh. on what he's put together, and as we start looking at, this is real money. But you also have a situation where these are people who have stuck their neck out prior when others wouldn't, started creating more synergy, more activity in our downtown. And even the fact that you could potentially be underage, but still be legal age to drive, and that's why you're attending. And that was something that, it's nice to ring the bell because I hadn't considered that before the meeting.
Anyone else?
I just want to say, you have to buy a ticket and pay. It's not free like everything else that we sponsor. The designated driver that goes on the trolley still has to pay. It's not free for anyone. I'm going to make the motion to deny it. I don't think we need to make any further conversation. If you guys want to go back to the drawing board and redo what we had already discussed and put in writing, then go ahead. But I'm going to make the motion to deny this first application, to follow the rules and guidelines that we already set. Like I said, I don't have a problem if they came to us with the Easter egg hunt or the Halloween, that's different days, but, God, I sound like I'm really old, but I really don't think that's the right thing to do. I'd rather see us help out other groups and organizations that are more family-friendly and are open to the public and that we don't charge, like we've done the parades and stuff in the past. My opinion, that's my motion.
Well, let's be specific. You said number one, but let's call it the Shia Spectacular. So, what it's called in here. Just say you're doing
Application
your
number one,
motion.
or-
My motion for application number one is to deny.
Is to deny the application from Shia for the Spectacular.
Do we have oh, go ahead.
I'll wait, but I want to make a comment before the vote.
You need a second.
Yeah, we need a second, and then that could even be for discussion. We can have further discussion.
For the purpose of allowing Councilmember Welsh to speak, then I'll second it.
So some of my thoughts with hearing the discussion on this would be maybe working with Shia that in order to allow anyone the ability to get on the trolley, that I know designated driver tickets. Sorry. I've been on the trolley events, and sometimes you need that designated driver. But maybe in order to qualify for the sponsorship, that there would be a certain amount of designated driver tickets available at no charge. Because then what you're doing is, instead of charging $20 for a designated driver, someone who is not 21 can get that designated driver ticket, can be more responsible to cart their parents around, who are going to be getting drunk at this event, but also gives them an opportunity to offer something that's not for sale, which I think meets all those guidelines and kind of fits it. But I know that with this new rule, we're only allowing applications twice a year. So I don't know if the second round of applications is going to happen before this event. So I don't know if the motion maker can amend the motion that maybe grant this application if, and we have a Shia representative here, is able to agree to provide free designated driver tickets for trolley attendants that could be under the age of 18. I think that would qualify on your rules, but also and maybe they can, talk about it, but before, canceling it, that's why I gave these other options, or just want some more conversation on it. Thanks.
I think each establishment's gonna have their own rules on that as well. So it's not just like you can't blanket that with what Shia can do. Like for us, we don't let people that aren't 21 in unless they're literally with their parents. So if that's, it's just something to take into consideration as well, which would be.
Yeah, but we're talking about riding on the trolley.
For sure, yeah.
So a designated driver can stand outside of an establishment that's 21 and up if they're not 21. There's nothing against the law saying they can't stand on the sidewalk while their parents go in and get their free drink and their free tasting. So what we're saying though is they can't ride on the trolley. So I don't know if there's any restrictions with the trolleys of the age having to be 21 and up, and I think that's kind of the discussion here, is that it's a ticketed event that's paid for and it's 21 and up, and that kind of didn't follow the guideline, so.
I'm not going to change my motion. I just don't think that we're sponsoring the consumption of alcohol because that's the purpose of this event. Where you go to different establishments and you consume samples of alcohol and appetizers. So my question is, what's the liability for the CRA? Is there a liability for the CRA?
No, we're not serving alcohol.
Okay.
Interesting. You have anything else, Tom? No. I think my biggest problem isn't so much the age restriction as it is a ticketed event. They have to pay to be on the trolley. So if we start sponsoring paid events, what's to stop anybody else in the downtown area, or South Cape as it's called, to have an event at their establishment or a concert, and they ask us to sponsor part of the concert? What do we do? Where do we stop everything? How does this work? You seconded the motion. I think perhaps we should call the roll and see where we are. I almost like the idea of going along with this, with the spooktacular this time, but I don't want to start to make a precedent that we're going to sponsor every trolley event, be it Spooktacular, New Year's Eve,
Bacon Fest.
Bacon Fest. That's coming up pretty soon. What else? You have the July Brew Fest. Can you come up here and
I believe
Bobby?
we're only allowed 2 events for sponsor, correct? Anyways, so typically do we do one of our trick or treat, or this year was the Easter, and then we do one of our larger 1,000-person events that's also the, I guess technically adult 121 and up with the age restriction.
Aren't we gonna, eventually we're gonna sponsor the Pride Parade?
That's a separate organization.
That's separate,
Mhm.
okay,
She
that's not
has
you?
separated, yeah, that's Pride Cape Coral and then South Cape
Okay,
Hospitality.
I thought that was you guys too, sorry. Can you do what council member, our liaison, Bobby Welsh, what he suggested, to give the designated driver a free ticket? How many of those do you actually sell, if I can ask?
It's less than 10, probably. It's less than 20. We pretty much open up 20 for sure, guaranteed.
And the ticket's a $20 ticket, so we're talking $400 maybe? So that's not going to kill your bottom line.
I can't personally make the decision. I'd have to talk to the board of directors, as I'm just a marketing representative for SHIA. I'd have to get a vote on whether they'd allow it, because one of the individuals, our president, owns a bar that is 21 and up only, how Greg had mentioned prior to this. So I know Dixie, who's normally with us, 21 and up, the Dive, 21 and up, so we would have to have a discussion and have it voted on. I can't make that decision.
Okay.
Today, at least.
So if these establishments have a 21 and over rule for their establishment, I think I'm going to agree with Janice, and I think I will support her motion. I really don't want to do that, but yes, I think I will support her motion.
Well, here's the thing. So, didn't we already make it a rule?
Yeah,
Are
we
we going
did.
against? That's
We
what I'm
did.
saying. We've already made it a rule. So I wasn't for it the last time, and I'm not for it this time. It's nothing personal, but we've adopted rules, and we're not going to follow our rules. If you want to change it at a later date, that's fine. But this was a retreat that we had, and it was discussed, and it's in writing, without age restrictions. I circled it. So that's my feeling.
All right, so should we call the question here? Call the roll, please, Madam City Clerk.
Biondi,
Aye.
Brantley,
No.
Gebhardt,
And this is to agree this is if we agree on the,
The motion is to deny the first application, Shia Spooktacular.
okay, no.
Keim,
Aye.
Slaughter,
No.
2 ayes, 3 nays. Motion to deny failed.
Now, you can't approve an application. You should probably somebody should probably do a motion to approve the Shia Spectacular application.
That was one of the questions I asked. Can we take all three as one vote, or will there be 3 discussions
I
on
would
each?
do individual.
You can do that. However, if you do that and somebody has an objection to one of the 3, you
Fair
may
enough.
get a no, which would hurt the rest. So, but I would encourage you to do a motion now to approve the Shia Spectacular application.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to approve the Shia 10th Annual South Cape Spectacular Drink and Treat as a existing special event that has previously been held, and we acknowledge that the prior approval was not able to be realized simply because of the storm, and in practice, we will continue that. However, let me end it there. Should I repeat that?
Due to circumstances beyond the control of the event producer, they had to cancel. That's
Thank
basically
you.
what you're saying.
Do you want me to repeat that, or does the
Nope,
clerk
nope,
have
nope,
that?
I was just trying to clarify.
You did a good job.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, so we have a motion from Janice. Who made the motion? Tom made the motion. Jim Brantley seconded. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Biondi,
No.
Brantley,
Yes.
Gebhardt,
Yes.
Keim,
No.
Slaughter,
Yes.
3 ayes, 2 nays. Motion carried.
Thank you. Okay. If I may, while we're still on this subject, I would just like to say that I think we need to have some kind of rule adjustments made for the special event grants. I think we need to have a meeting sooner rather than later because we're going to have a lot of holiday events. And I think that we should give the responsibility before these requests get to us as the board, they need to be vetted through staff. If we have rules, I honestly, I still do not believe that this should have ever gotten to us. So I would like to have some kind of a discussion, either an hour before our next meeting or set a special little meeting. We don't have to be here to have the meeting. We could have a workshop, but I think we need to do that. And that's just a recommendation. I don't think we need to have a motion on it.
I agree with that.
You agree?
And just out of curiosity, how many of these applications did we get that we have not seen? Like approximately?
I don't have the answer at this time, but I think these are all the ones we received. I'm not sure if there's been any that have not been advanced.
Yeah, so it's not like a humongous amount or anything like that?
No, I mean, we
Okay.
went to the 2 cycles a year, and I think everybody had, we advertised that, put it out there. I think everybody that was intending on submitted in the time frame that was there. So as far as the pre-screen, I mean, we have no problem with that. I fully support the recommendation to have a discussion because I was here in May when we went through this. I understand there's several members who don't want ticketed events. That was discussed, and what came out of the discussion was to put in place age restrictions. So we're going by what the previous actions of the board were, and if it doesn't meet the intent of the discussion where you all landed, I mean, sometimes individual thoughts don't carry through a motion, and we're left with, and staff has to go with what we're left with.
Right.
So if this still does not meet the intent, and there's still an effort to move this to a more restrictive nature, we will administer whatever you all want. We just need to know what the parameters are.
Okay. Shall we move on? Or, Greg, go ahead. Nope, you're done, okay. Where are we?
So do you want us to set up a workshop before the next meeting, or do you want to actually just deal with it in the meeting? It's up to you. I heard a couple of different things. Let's just.
Deal with that at a later date and just dispose of today's business, and then depending on the clock.
Yeah, no, what I'm saying is at the next meeting, there was a question about.
No, I think a separate little, it could be an hour prior to the regular meeting, if we can do that. We don't have to schedule a big event.
Well, if you're going to be planning on voting on a change to the policy, why don't you just put it as an item on the agenda at the next meeting, if that's what you want to do?
Sure.
And you discuss it.
Okay.
If we
That
could,
way you can vote on it.
then if we could, let me add then, would it be appropriate to have staff come up with, in other words, what kind of changed my thinking was just hearing staff going, no, we didn't perceive it that way. We looked at it this way, and I thought, reasonable people can disagree. So my thought was, as we get into some of these, what are we really trying to control? And in this case, I think we don't want to spend public dollars in areas where it'd be considered inappropriate, or it just simply, there might be better uses of that fund. But we also realize through our marketing and through these activities and events, they make the news, people come here, social media. So there is a value to that. In fact, the city economic development, they talk about some of those things. So one of my concerns would be when we do it, take a look at what other communities have maybe done to control some of their events, especially the larger ones. And then more importantly, are there some additional criteria beyond simply an age? Because even age, I get, a kid's Easter egg hole. As a grown man, you're not going to jump in line, but yet, So my only thought is when we get into age, there's also events that are at the very low age with children that certainly are open, but they're pretty much restricted to that group. And I think that's what we're seeing here is different groups have large enough associations that, they can actually bring forward an event. And it's our job to consider it with the criteria we got.
So what are we doing? We're going to ask you to put this as an item on the agenda for our next meeting, and we'll have a discussion.
I have a question. Let's just say that the next trolley event has 600 people instead of the 1,000. Are we going to also make that change as well?
As far as how much of a sponsorship, is that
Well,
what you're
it
getting?
says here that the events have to have 1,000 or more people, I think I read somewhere. So if they have 500 or 600, is that something else we're gonna have to think about to change besides the other stuff that we've discussed tonight?
Well, the only way to get an accurate count of attendance is to ticket. And you all don't, what I'm hearing, even though it's not in the guidelines, is that you all don't want tickets. And in addition, the way we read that, just so we're clear again on how staff would interpret that, it says.
1,000 minimum, right?
It says anticipated, so the key verb there for us is,
Yeah, it's a
are you
final.
expecting to have 1,000 or more? Whether or not 1,000 actually turn out is irrelevant for us in processing the application. It would be the verb anticipated.
All right. Anybody else? I think we've got this one done. We'll move on.
We're done for today.
Done for today.
Oh, you got problems.
Do we have to go through each one of these events and say yay or nay?
You said it.
Well, that's the best route. You don't have to. That's just a recommendation.
Okay.
If you think there's no problem with the next two and you want to do a motion to approve Pride Cape Coral and the Rotary Club of Cape Coral's Art Festival and Marketplace in one motion? That can be done too.
Does anybody want to do them separately, or do you want to do them as one?
I would like to do separately.
Okay, then we can do that. All right. Shia, that's spectacular. The Pride Cape Coral 6th Annual Pride event. Can I have a motion to approve the CRA special event sponsorship application request for the Pride Cape Coral in the amount of $5,000? I need a motion.
I'll make that
and
motion.
a second.
Second?
Okay, we have discussion.
The only thing when I was looking that over, that I just suggested, and I heard it wouldn't be an issue, is to add, like last year, even though I won't be a CRA commissioner at that time, that I like the fact that we were offered to participate in the parade and we were on the trolley. And I didn't see that listed as, I think that's more important than having a VIP section or whatever, because there was only 3 of us that went last year. So that's the only thing. But other than that, my motion stands.
Discussion?
Would Pride be willing to let the CRA board members be a part of the parade again this year and get t-shirts?
Of course, yes. Absolutely.
I'm going to jump in here too. That parade was it was a lot of fun. It was well organized. It was very, it was bright, it was colorful, and it was a fun event. There was tons of people along the route once you got down to a certain point. I think for us as a CRA board, it's important that we were given a lot of acknowledgement about how we helped to sponsor that event. And I would just, I'll go along with Janice. And I think if no one else has anything to say, let's take a vote. Madam City Clerk?
Biondi?
Aye.
Brantley?
Aye.
Gebhardt?
Aye.
Time?
Aye.
Slaughter?
Aye.
5 ayes, motion carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. And next, special event sponsorship for the 39th Cape Coral Art Festival and Marketplace. I need a motion.
I make a motion to accept their application and sponsorship.
Second?
Approve.
Good afternoon, Mr. Welsh. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Does anybody have anything to say here? We have discussion. Then Madam City Clerk, let's call the roll.
Can I
Oh,
just,
absolutely.
before you take a vote, one, I want to say thank you for the years that the CRA has sponsored the art festival. It is a good event, and it does put a lot of people in the city of Cape Coral. I would ask that you please, for in the future, if you could look at your grants and possibly increase them. As we just saw a few minutes ago, you have an extra $1.2 million to play around and put into a bucket of grants. Last year, for police protection, we spent $4,400 on police protection. This year, we're spending $6,400 on the same police protection. With that being said, as everything has gone up in price, we're still a free event. We have not changed the cost of the art festival to any of the vendors or to any of the participants in the event. So a little bit more help in the future would be great. Please take that into consideration. As everything has gone up, so has your revenue. So I appreciate that. And again, thank you again for the support that you've given us over the years. Appreciate it.
I'll just add to that, your event, the art festival, I would guess you have at least 100,000 people over the weekend with everything that goes on.
40,000 people on Cape Coral Parkway. There's a point where you couldn't see
Correct.
your feet as you were walking on Cape Coral Parkway.
Yeah, it's a really, really good event. I know just road closure cost has gone up tremendously. I know that from the parade, the Veterans Parade. I know that you know, it's just a lot of money. And when you have that many people that come into an area and they're going to spend money in your restaurants and in your shops, I think it's good that we have the ability to sponsor you. And in the future, we could probably look at increasing our sponsorship because of the increase in the costs. So it's just a thought. Do you have anything?
Yeah, I think when we did the workshop and we decided to do these grants in 2 application periods, as you can see, we only had the 3. Because those are the 3 that have been established and things that have done. But looking to the future, I know that you guys have a $5,000 limit on your grant applications, but if we look at the budget and what's there, when we start to get these in, we know that we only have these 3. So say you have a $50,000 budget, but you only have 3 applications, limiting them at 5,000 might not be what you need until you have those 10 applications. Then everyone only gets 5. So when we go to workshop the alcohol or the 21 and up or the trolley riding, I'd like to maybe look at, as the gentleman came up earlier, police presence wasn't $4,700 anymore, it's $6,000. And so maybe look at the amount of money that we have in the budget compared to the amount of events that actually were sponsored, and maybe increase some of those funds and put that in there, not limiting it to 5,000. So I think that's a good workshop discussion to have at that time too. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Janice.
Let's not forget, I know they didn't have to do the application because it was already in the budget, but it's more than 3 because we're also sponsoring 3 nights of bike night. So we need to make sure that we add that too, which I'm okay with.
Okay, so Madam City Clerk, we have a motion and a second. Madam City Clerk, call the roll.
Biondi?
Aye.
Brantley?
Aye.
Gebhardt?
Aye.
Heim?
Aye.
Slaughter?
Aye.
5 ayes, motion carried.
Okay. Moving along, next item is 9B, a demolition incentive program. Sounds serious. I will now turn the floor over to staff.
Good afternoon, Sharon Woodbury, Economic and Business Development Officer. Today I am presenting to you a framework for a program that we're proposing for consideration from the CRA board. And we're looking at a demolition incentive program, and the vision for this is just expediting the removal of what we see as obsolete buildings and making way for redevelopment. So the goals under the program are to revitalize, spur economic growth, and enhance the overall appearance for our residents and visitors. What we're proposing are 2 different methods, so 2 different tracks for the demolition program. One is to establish cooperative agreements with privately owned properties to demolish structures, and then the second is providing demolition grants to property owners or developers and reimbursing the costs of their demolition. Costs exceeding $50,000 would receive a prorated grant amount for an amount not to exceed $75,000. And I'll get into explaining that a little bit further into the presentation. The guidelines for the grant program. We would cover 100% of the demolition costs up to $50,000. Grants would be awarded for projects that exceed $50,000. We'll use a formula that combines $50,000 and providing 50% of those expenses that are over $50,000. Eligible projects for the grant program are structures or accessory structures. So we're not talking about a building, someone coming in and doing interior demolition. We're talking about completely raising a building or a structure and making room for development. So to further explain the rate of reimbursement, the $50,000 cap is at 100%, we will provide funding. If it's a $35,000 demolition $35,000 demolition project, we would provide $35,000 as a grant. Once you get into projects that exceed $50,000, we're proposing that we will provide 100% of the dollar amount up to $50,000. And then when you exceed those costs beyond $50,000, we are providing half of those costs. So an example, if it's a $70,000 demolition cost, we would provide $50,000 in funding, and then that $20,000 difference beyond $50,000 is what we'll pay 50% of. The $50,000 plus 50% of the $20,000 is $10,000, and it would be a $60,000 grant for the project. The maximum amount for projects that exceed $50,000 would be a $75,000 grant, which means at the cost of $100,000, the applicant would exceed the would reach the maximum amount for the grant of $75,000. The second program that we're looking at is what we are looking at in terms of a cooperative agreement. And with that structure, the applicant would provide a legal document. We would come to an agreement with the applicant, and the responsibility for the demolition would be solely with the city. The CRA project manager would serve as the project manager for the project and take it from the beginning to the end. So our manager would pull the permits, oversee the demolition, the disposal of the debris, restore the site, coordinate all of the inspections that are required, and then process the payment requisitions and applications. So we are removing the burden of having to go through those steps for the owner of the building. They enter into an agreement with the city. We take on the role and take on all of the functions associated with the demolition. Additional guidelines for the grants. What we're proposing is that the grants have to be approved before any of the work can commence. Applicants have to obtain 3 bids so that we can make sure that this is a fair price that we're considering for the grant amount. The applicant will be responsible for conducting all of the studies that are necessary for demolition. They're responsible for securing the permits and approvals. And the project must be completed within 4 months of the award of the grant. We would place a priority on, or when we're scoring this, we would look at prioritizing multiple structures that are next to each other for assembly and creating larger sites. And that's it. I'll open it up for any questions.
Go ahead.
Yes, Ms. Woodbury. At the last, well, there are a couple of meetings we talked about the B2B, the breaking barriers, and I remember I think the mayor had spoken, a few others were started with different examples. Pave a parking lot, do this, build a new building. Could a person double dip or double tap off this fund and say up to 50 to demo some structure and then an additional fund for the new construction or the new improvement? Is it?
Yes. So we have a variety of grant programs beyond the B2B program. We also have some of our other Cape Competes incentive programs. We would look to maximize our participation, and if they qualify through a number of programs, we would consider the application for multiple programs.
If that were to happen, are there higher level projects that might be like a mixed use or affordable housing, or something that where it provides more than just that developer? You know, they're doing it for a reason, but oftentimes when you use a public subsidy, that's usually what it's for, is to get over the complicated things that will kill a project, or in some cases just literally a subsidy for an affordability. Does the city right now, well, actually you're going through your economic development update, so that would probably bring some of those ideas together. So never mind, I'll wait a couple months and we'll talk again. All righty, but thank you, that helps understand. At least you can, well, we're gonna do this and then we're gonna do that, and 2 different funds of money. But do you have the confidence though, that when you went back 2 lines on what the burden of staff would be, is that something that you're really looking to grab a hold of.
I'm sorry, did you say you wanted to look
Well,
at one?
actually, I've got it open myself.
The technical assistance part, the second part.
Oh, yes.
So
Go ahead.
the idea of the technical assistance part is, let's say, for example, we have a single storefront that, you know, somebody bought and they're a restaurateur. And they're looking at possibly buying the lot next door and building a bigger, or marketing both pieces of property with someone with a, you know, for a joint venture for a sale of a bigger piece. The idea here is that a lot of times the owner operator of a site may not have the technical expertise to do what is being awarded under this grant program, but would like to get over the hump getting it done.
Have you calculated some of the value? And the reason I ask that question is where sometimes you're able to show to get something, well, it's this or that, or sometimes in-kind services. And that was the point I wanted to make, is sometimes when you're a developer, you've done this, but sometimes some people have great ideas, but they're not going to demo it. They're not going to build the new one. They're going to run that, whatever that is. And it's that lack of technical understanding that also is a project killer. And to me, being that I'm partly involved in that line of work, that's a huge, huge incentive then if the city's going to essentially hand walk certain people through that you normally wouldn't do at the front counter across the street. So that's, in a weird way, that's the third component that if we can measure without getting too crazy, I think we should. Because that way, even at budget, you let council know, well, we're doing this and that, and there's money, but you know what? Our staff time still has a high value, and this is what we think that additional value has provided our community. So that might be something might want to track.
We absolutely will, and at a later point, we're going to be introducing our new CRA specialist. But if you also recall during our budget discussions, I advanced coming forward in October, we're going to be having a dedicated project manager that we're going to, hire from the private sector to work on nothing but CRA projects to advance all the things that you all would like to get done, as well as the CRA staff. So we're going to have a dedicated project manager here, within a couple of months that will be able to provide this technical assistance. We realize that this is a hurdle, right? But if we're serious about getting rid of slum and blight, which is the ultimate charge for any CRA, community redevelopment agency, this is the start of it, right? Eliminating the older buildings that are in disrepair or needing substantial capital inflows to make it newer, to get to the market rates that we would like to be fresher. Sometimes it's cheaper, and these are some of the numbers that realtors would help them with, or some type of financier would help them understand. Well, instead of putting $120,000 into this building with the insurance rates that you have from a building that's from the 80s, knock it down, build a brand new one for more money, but your run cost will be cheaper. So we're trying to be really aggressive here with this program to get rid of that. In addition, we know after Hurricane Ian, there was substantial damage to some buildings down in the CRA, in the South Cape. And not all of them have moved yet on whether or not to fix, to sell, to demo. And so the timing of this, in retrospect, probably should have been out of the gate with this in February, but we didn't. That's okay. But we're still in a good position to where there's some serious decisions that need to be made by owners of properties down there that this may help start aggregating larger properties, or at least get us newer development. And the idea is that you'll see a decrease in the TIF while we have the building knocked down, but when they come forward with the bigger, better plan, then we get an exponential increase in the TIF, which is the whole goal of the CRA. But we can absolutely, back to your question, we can track staff hours dedicated to this, absolutely.
Anybody else? Any other questions? Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you.
Are we voting on this? Or was this just information?
This is just informational at this
time. Perfect, thank you. Okay, so that is demo. Oh, a presentation on the bridge design.
Good afternoon, Percy Zambrano, Interim Public Works Director. So as you know, the Cape Coral Bridge is maintained by Lee County, so it is up for replacement in 2027. So they started the process to design, redesign the bridge, and they just realized rather than just replace the westbound, the one coming into the Cape, which is the oldest one, and keeping the old one, the eastbound, the one that goes to Fort Myers, in place, they're gonna just redo the entire bridge. So it's a very ambitious project. They started ahead of time. That's why we are seeing preliminary results as we speak. And the executive director recommended staff to bring this presentation to your attention. So I have Laura Dodd, our transportation planner, principal planner, bringing you the highlights as they pertain to the CRA. Thank you. So you are.
Good afternoon, Laura Dodd. Thank you, Persides. Appreciate it. So what you have before you is an informational item related to the Cape Coral Bridge Project Development and Environmental Study, or PD&E. Just as a little bit of background, the objective for this project, or the catalyst, was to address capacity and bridge safety deficiencies. The project area is 2.1 miles, or from Del Prado to McGregor Boulevard, and the proposal includes 3 options, 2 of which are build options and 1 no build option. So within the PD&E, some of the related changes, let me just walk through those briefly. Those include a lane repurposing at Del Prado and Cape Coral Parkway intersection to improve the level of service and to reduce delays. This includes the addition of a 3rd lane in each direction east of Del Prado and is proposed to increase capacity. Due to right-of-way constraints, the widening is proposed to occur within the inside of the existing median with a repurposing of the center left turn lane. This is envisioned to enhance safety, and also the opposing traffic will be separated by a continuous concrete median barrier. And lastly, an eastbound to westbound U-turn lane is proposed under the bridge and within Bernice Braden Park. Of these changes, I'd like to bring your attention to 5 key elements. Specifically, Waikiki Avenue is from a 2-lane eastbound with a designated southbound right turn to a 3-lane eastbound with designated right turn and pedestrian refuge island. Southeast 17th Avenue will change to a 1-way southbound with on-street parking and eliminate the right turn off of Cape Coral Parkway. And additionally, 3 other items worth noting is these changes will require the relocation of the Veterans Monument. It will include a continuous median, which limits turning movements up to the bridge. And also, lastly, the U-turn movement is now being accommodated. So that being said, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have relating to this, but also you please feel free to reach out to the county as they're the project manager. You can reach them at capecoralbridgeproject.com to review the project information or contact their project manager. Any questions?
I just have one quick question. So I can't really see this that well, but when you get past Del Prado heading west, they're going to take out the parking, right, and add that. Is it going to be all the time or certain times of the day? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Are you addressing Southeast 17th Avenue?
I'm talking about Cape Coral Parkway west of Del Prado. I see that it's in yellow. So they're going to take out the street parking, right?
It is my...
Let me answer that question.
Sure, absolutely.
So we will work that with the county because that will be within the city's jurisdiction.
Right.
So they will be coming with 3 lanes, and then we will have to work with them. Of course, Lee County will love to see all of the parking on Cape Coral Parkway to go away. So that's something, those details need further refinement.
And that would be all day, every day, not like certain hours, like 5 to 7 or
Correct.
something,
That
right?
could be an option,
Yeah.
yes. And I wanted to point out, so the key elements, we're gonna have a U-turn under the bridge, which is something that we lack right now, and that's why we have that continuous left that give access to the restaurants there, the boat, no, boat.
Ford's Garage.
Ford's Garage. So that's one, there's gonna be a concrete divider. So that option will be out. So the U-turn will provide access for people going in the east direction, wanted to access the other side of Cape Coral Parkway. They will go through the U-turn under the bridge. The other is that Waikiki will have a right-in, which right now, remember for safety, that was eliminated some years ago. So now Waikiki will have right-in and right-out because of the reconfiguration of the median and as Laura said, the relocation of that fountain and the monument, then they will gain right of way. So it is safer to do a right-in, right-out. And the other key element is that parking on that shop by Culverts, there is a shopping center that they have parking that access Cape Coral Parkway. They won't have that access to Cape Coral Parkway anymore. So that parking will have to be accessed through the inside so the county is looking at all those issues. Okay, but we wanted to bring those to your attention. We have the posters on the back. We also have how the bridge lands on the other side of the river. If you're interested, we're here to help you understand this major project. There is a big public information component. There was a workshop last month. More workshops will come, and I'm expecting Lee County to eventually come before council to present their findings. So any question, and also if you have any question, feel free to contact me or Laura, and we will know how to direct you through the county.
I have a question. Is this 2 lanes prior to Del Prado, and then it expands to 3 lanes? And then when you get on the other side of the bridge to McGregor, what happens? Are they adjusting that as well?
So that's one of their challenges of this project, because they don't want to just have a funnel. So they're trying to address improvements on both sides of the bridge. So they're trying to do improvements on the other side too.
Because if we're going to be 3 lanes, and when you get over there, you have to merge into 2, that's not going to solve
they
the
have
problem.
option. They have 2 alternatives on the other side of the river to improve capacity there too. The other one that will improve traffic, this is the Prado and Cape Coral Parkway.
Mm-hmm.
So these right turn will be back to be a continuous, uninterrupted right turn. Okay? So, and here is where we have Metro Diner and Paradise Grill.
Mm-hmm.
That's the parking that I mentioned.
That's going to go away?
That is, yes.
And what
Parking
happens?
behind Paradise?
They
Grill?
won't get access, that area, they won't, so Lee County is looking into that, because it's affecting parking on those businesses.
That's going to hurt them, I'm thinking. And this, from the picture that I was looking at, it looks like it's not going to be one bridge this way, one bridge that way. It's going to be one big bridge.
And with bicycle and pedestrian facilities. So it's going to be multimodal.
Okay.
Okay?
Questions? Go ahead, Greg.
For the on Cape Parkway west of Del Prado, where it says proposed elevated roadway, how will that work with the businesses that are down there now? Will there be a way to turn off, or will you have to turn off before and come back over? Or I guess how much elevation is that?
Can you repeat? I'm sorry.
So I think I'm seeing it right. I might not be to the west of Del Prado on Cape Coral Parkway. The yellow area says proposed elevated roadway with retaining walls. What will that mean for the businesses that are down there?
They will see like an elevated roadway with concrete.
Okay, so there's gonna be no turn off after you reach the yellow portion of the parkway. You can't turn off to any of those businesses. You have to cut around before that, correct? Okay.
Correct.
And then what will that mean for the roadways that are already there? Will they have to redo all of the road curbing, all that stuff in front of the buildings?
Yes.
Okay.
And again, these are their first preliminary findings. They're sharing that with the community. They want to hear feedback. I went to the workshop. It was very well attended. A lot of people were there. So spread the word that this is coming.
How many businesses are going to be affected by that elevated road coming down west of Del Prado?
I don't have the count, do you?
Ma'am, off the top of my head, I'm not sure of that number, but what I can do
Estimate.
is I can circle back around with the county and try and find some answers to these questions.
Okay. Yeah, that would be an interesting thing, because there are quite a few businesses over there.
What, can you clarify that question for me, just so?
Pardon?
Can you clarify that question about an elevated road? Isn't that what?
So yeah, it looks like there's going to be an elevated road that starts on Cape Coral Parkway well before the bridge. I'm sure just to get up to the, so it's not as steep of a.
But it's here.
So
Let me take it there.
if you look at the map, the orange is elevated.
So is the yellow elevated as well?
Orange is elevated, yellow is at grade.
It's this pink, because they need to elevate the roadway to make the way for the U-turn underneath.
I think
Gotcha.
Mr. Gephardt was talking about
Yeah.
west of Del Prado. He was talking
On this
Cape
little
Coral
key
Parkway.
there. That's what I'm seeing. I don't know, this is slide 108, I believe, on ours. On the bottom left key says elevated, what does it say? Or proposed elevated roadway with retaining walls.
Oh, scroll down, there you go, you're on that key right there. See, the orange is the elevated, like, there could be some buildup of grade, if that's what you're asking about, where they just kind of build up the grade with a retaining wall.
Yeah.
It's not coming,
Onto Cape Coral Parkway.
you see the scale, he's talking about the scale at the bottom.
Yeah, here, right?
Yeah, down there, right.
Yeah, and then to the left and down to there that says proposed elevated, but if, just curiosity.
Sir, if I may, I believe Mr. Ilchison's interpretation is correct, but I will follow up with the county and circle back around with you to ensure that that is in fact true.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes?
I noticed that one of the things is moving the, I'll call it the club fountain that's there. Is that part of the budget that the county is proposing, or is that something that maybe this board is gonna have to look at a relocation of that fountain and potential locations? 'Cause I know earlier in the meeting, we discussed the clock that was there and waiting to put that up, but is there a place for that fountain in the new design?
This segment of Cape Coral Parkway is under the county maintenance. I imagine it's part of their budget to relocate the fountain.
Okay.
And we're talking, what was the price tag of the project is more than 100 million.
Well, I didn't know if, being the CRA is deciding where to put this new clock, if they should maybe talk about where maybe relocating that fountain, or if they are gonna have to move that fountain to allow greater access, if that's something that they should, as a collective body, decide. So that was just my thought, to look into that and maybe bring it back to them.
Yeah,
before.
we'll look into that.
Thank you.
When are you proposing to begin? 2027, is that what I understood?
That's when it's due, but they're starting the process ahead of time. So now we're in 2023, it will take another 2 years to complete the design, then we have to go through permitting. 3 years, I expect them to start breaking down in 3-4 years.
Okay,
And
and then
they,
how long would that project take? I'm just curious.
48 months. It's a bit, let me
4
see.
years.
Yes. Sure. Yeah, it's a big undertaking, and also the logistics. And that's why they took this approach to replace both spans rather than just one, because the aggravation to the community through the extent of the project and the logistics, because they're going to have to keep that bridge flowing, that connection flowing while they're building the new bridge, and then, you know, shifting lanes. So it's going to be an interesting project.
So we're looking at probably 8-9 years before we actually get a new bridge.
Yes.
And what happens as they're building it? Will we still be using the old bridges?
Correct. So they will keep one connection flowing, and so that's part of the design. How they design and how they build this in phases to keep the connection operational throughout the project.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have anything? We're good. Moving on. My fingers are not working today.
66-23 proposed LDC change.
Okay, item 9D. Ordinance 66-23, the proposed LDC change parking requirements. This is informational only. Good afternoon, Mr. Strube. How are you?
I'm doing well, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, board members. Mike Struve, Planning Team Coordinator with the City Planning Division. Again, this is informational because it affects properties in the South Cape District, and we wanted to discuss this particular amendment to our Land Development Code with you before we went to the Planning Zoning Commission and also to the City Council. This particular code change would eliminate minimum parking requirements for a very select group of properties in the South Cape zoning district. And these properties are associated with 6 city parking areas, several of which you've heard about already in past presentations by staff that have come to the podium this afternoon. We believe this represents sort of a measured incremental approach, and will also represents a more flexible marking-based approach towards parking by letting developers decide whether they should provide parking on their site, and if they do choose to provide parking, how much parking they should provide. This map on the left-hand side of your screen shows 6 parking areas in the South Cape District. 4 of these are located along and just south of Southeast 47th Terrace, and that would include, for example, the Iguanamia parking area, as well as the Big John's Plaza parking area. Then there are 2 other larger parking areas, which would include Club Square to the north, and then the old Southwest Florida Veterans Museum parking area. And collectively, these 6 areas provide parking for about 1,350 vehicles currently. One thing I want to do very early on is make a distinction between what we consider a parking area and what we consider a parking area site, because our proposed changes to the Land Development Code uses both terms, and it's pretty important to keep those distinctly separate. City parking areas are those city parking areas where people can park. So these are all areas that are either owned by the city or they're managed by the city for parking. They're either deeded, there's a deed restriction for parking, or they're platted for parking. The parking sites that we refer to in our code and that I'll refer to throughout my presentation refer to smaller properties that either abut these city parking areas or are separated from the city parking areas by a walkway or an alley. And these are private properties, most of which are developed with small businesses. Our current regulations, our parking requirements are found in Article 6 of the Land Development Code. One thing I think that's important to keep in mind too is that there is a distinction between relaxing parking requirements and eliminating parking requirements. And the city has already taken some steps to relax parking requirements in certain areas of the city, particularly in the South Cape District, but also in the adjoining mixed-use Bimini zoning district. And in the South Cape District, parking standards generally are based on the length of frontage, linear frontage that you have along a street, in addition to the area of a site. And in general, as the amount of frontage on your site increases, as well as the area increases, the amount of required parking on that particular site increases, although not necessarily in a linear fashion. One of the things that's unique about the South Cape District is that owners of these parking lot sites can use city parking areas to meet part of their minimum required parking. And that's the only place in the city where that is true. And there is a way that we actually calculate that, and we call that a parking credit. And this is all outlined in our code in quite some detail. And the way we determine a parking credit is you multiply the area of a site in square feet times a parking allocation factor. And those parking allocation factors appear in a table in our code. And they also are included in Ordinance 66-23. You can actually look to see what those parking allocation factors are. And that parking allocation factor is then used, and you could subtract that out from what your total required parking is for a site. So just to give you a hypothetical example, a business owner may have a parking requirement of 30 parking spaces. Their parking credit may be 10 spaces, meaning that they could receive credit for providing parking in a city parking area for 10 spaces. You subtract that from 30, and that means that they would be required to provide a minimum of 10 or 20 spaces on site. So that's sort of how that works. This slide here shows the majority of the changes that we're proposing and plan to bring forward to public hearing. The first is found in section 6.1.8J2. And again, this is an ordinance 6623, and this says the minimum parking standards for the South Cape District appearing in table 6.1.7b shall not apply to any site abutting a city parking area or any site within 25 feet of a city parking area, excluding alleys and walkways. So this removes the parking requirements for those parking lots. Then in table 6.1.7b, that has been amended to eliminate a footnote that removes a reference to parking area sites and parking credits. So that eliminates the parking credits and the language associated essentially with the parking credits. And then lastly, in table 6.1.8.a, this table identifies specifically by block and lot which parking lot sites correspond to specific city parking areas. So you can see which properties specifically would have their mandatory minimum city parking standards eliminated. And this table has also been amended to eliminate parking allocation factors, so those allocation factors would no longer be needed. There are several advantages as well as a few disadvantages to this code change, which is normally the case for amendments to our land development code, but we do think that the advantages of this approach far outweigh the disadvantages. Very briefly, this eliminates a costly mandatory requirement for an area in the city where we think it makes sense to eliminate that mandatory parking requirement. This is an area of the city that is really quite walkable. It's in the urban core of the South Cape district, and all of these businesses that are located along these city parking areas can continue to have people that visit their businesses park in these city parking areas. The change will also increase the land availability, meaning it will free up land that might otherwise be used for parking that can now be used for the actual footprint of either a new building or an expanded building. Over time, we believe that this will encourage the elimination of driveways, which should help to improve traffic flow and may also improve pedestrian safety by eliminating conflict points. The change should encourage walkability, should encourage one-stop parking where people might then visit multiple businesses while parking once. We also think that it'll facilitate improvements over time to urban form as these driveways are eliminated and parking lots in front of buildings are eliminated. That will encourage people to redevelop their property as that mandatory parking requirement is eliminated. We'll start to see more buildings located closer to the sidewalk, and that should make for a more inviting downtown area. And lastly, related to that, as the urban fabric or improvements to the area are being made that should attract more people to the downtown area. The more people that you attract to the downtown area, we think that will translate to more people spending more money in the South Cape district, so there is a potential economic benefit there. Very briefly, the disadvantages. It does eliminate a perceived entitlement because this is an entitlement in terms of being able to use those city parking areas for part of their parking requirement. However, the entitlement that these people will receive by the elimination of their minimum mandatory parking requirements in totality will be a far greater entitlement, we believe, for these businesses. In the short term, it may create a little confusion about where customers park, but in reality, at least right now, business owners can continue to have their patrons park in these city parking areas because they provide for public parking. And again, if people, as they develop or redevelop their sites, want to provide parking, that will be left up to each individual owner. Lastly, this represents a permanent change. Once we go down this path and eliminate parking, that is not something that is easily reversed or something that the city could really claw back in terms of changing their mind. Just very briefly, and I'm not going over these in detail, but we did look at this for consistency with policies appearing in the South Cape Downtown CRI plan. It is consistent with at least 2 policies there. It's consistent with several policies that appear in the future land use and the economic development elements of the city comprehensive plan. And these changes are also consistent with review criteria for proposed LDC text amendments And I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have about this particular ordinance. We do plan to present this ordinance at public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission tomorrow.
Yeah, one quick question. Mike, does that go to the hearing examiner next then?
No, it will go to, any code change goes to the Planning and Zoning Commission since it's policy related or oriented,
all right.
not to the hearing examiner.
I have a quick question. So, besides all the things that you listed, that this is a positive of why we want to do this, is it also, would you say, fair to say that this would also help increase the parking in the parking garages that are going to be made available, like, for example, the Cove?
I think those parking garages coming online will be a benefit in helping to make up any perceived deficiency in parking in the downtown area. And I think this step here, this ordinance change that I've discussed with you here, as well as some of these larger parking garages coming online, is really part and parcel of a much larger strategy to improve the parking situation in the downtown CRA. I think you'll be hearing more about that in the future. There are multiple benefits associated with not only alleviating the requirement of developers having to provide parking on these particular sites, but like I said earlier, over time, I think it will have there'll be other benefits associated with traffic flow, safety, stimulating economic development, and so on.
Do we have any idea, like, how much it's going to cost for, like, the parking garage for somebody who wants to go out to dinner at the Cove? And who gets that money, the developer or does the city?
So that would be, I believe, up to the developer. I'm not aware if there is any agreement with the city, with the developer, say with the Cove at 47th, whether or not they can charge a fee for the public to park. All I know is that the city has reserved over 100 spaces for public use in that parking garage.
Right, I just was wondering if we had an idea, like, how much, because we do have some people that come over from Fort Myers, and if they got to pay the bridge toll and then pay so much for parking, I just didn't know if we were thinking about something that if you ate at a restaurant on 47th and they stamped it, that they might not have to pay for parking. I just wondered how that worked.
To my knowledge, that is yet to be determined.
Okay.
And actually, it's the CRA. It's not the city.
So the CRA could possibly get...
The CRA, since they provided funds,
Right.
there's an agreement, and the CRA, if they want to charge, if you want to charge, you can charge. There is currently, and I think preliminarily, right now, as the COVID 47th is being constructed, over those 125 parking spaces that are reserved for public use, there is going to be a gate or whatever entrance for everybody else. So there are talks right now to pre-plan for some sort of payment kiosk, whatever you want to call it, with a gate there. If the CRA wants to go ahead and charge for parking. So they're pre-planning that for the future. May not, you may be able to just hit a button and go in, gate goes up, and you get it, and it's free. But if you want to have a charge, they're gonna have the electric there, they're gonna do everything that needs to be done to do that. And that's gonna probably come back to you in the next 6 to 8 months, I don't know.
Which
3
we won't
months,
be here,
I don't know.
but, okay. I was just curious.
Yeah. And then when the CRA dissolves, it will go to the city. So,
If there's a charge, you're saying?
correct, yes.
Thank you.
I would be opposed to seeing us charge parking. I think that you only need to look to Fort Myers to see the problems with that. That's my personal opinion.
Thank you for your time.
Yes, I would. Thank you very much. Michael is here with us today, and right now, as we are in this meeting, he's been sitting in my office where Helen was. The intent, as previously discussed with the board, is to have him go down to the building at Lafayette Street, and along with the project manager that we intend on bringing forward, and then also the trade specialist or trades worker, once that position is also refilled. And I will...
Wait a minute, did you just say refilled?
The trade specialist, yes.
He left?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that, okay.
Oh. Yes, he left. Where I was, caught me off guard there. But I'm sorry, I didn't know you didn't know that.
I didn't
thought we
know
discussed
that.
A previous meeting. Yes, so the trade specialist took another position and left us with a vacancy, so we're in the process of refilling that as well. But I will let Mike introduce himself to you all, and it's yours, Mike. You can go there. You got a microphone right there.
First of all, thank you very much for this opportunity, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Councilmember Welsh, it's an honor to be in this position. When I interviewed for this position, I was asked if there was anything I'd like to add. And make no doubt about it, the competition was very fierce. They asked me what I added, and I said, whoever you choose, regardless of whether it would be me, I hope that they have the same passion, love, and understanding of this community and the CRA as I do. You see, I served my country, I served my state, and now I'm serving my community, continuing. And it is, again, an honor to be here, and I promise to give 120% at all times. And with that, I would thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you and welcome. We're really happy you're on board with us, and we're going to see some interesting changes in that position, I think. I think it's going to be good for the CRA. So I thank you, Michael, for being here. Michael was the Grand Marshal of our Veterans Parade last year, which we couldn't have because of the hurricane, but we had a breakfast, and it was good. It was good. And he is on the committee, so you have to let him out every once in a while to come to the committee meetings, if that's okay. Anybody else?
Just congratulations and looking forward to working with you, Mike.
One last thing, I didn't want to say it, but I'm going to say it since I'm sitting next to him. Go Army.
Okay. What else have we got? 10B, alleyway improvements update. Who's going to talk to us? You're a busy lady today.
Yeah, that's me. So we just wanted to bring to your attention, we're doing an alley resurfacing, alley improvement projects by the Prado area, and also it clips into the CRA. So as you know, it's a very good project that City Council has prioritized. And what we're doing, we're completing missing links to make the alleys functional and better serve relieving capacity from Del Prado. So as you can see in this screen, you see the scope of the project. So it goes all along Del Prado, and then north of Cape Coral Parkway on Del Prado, and then south of Cape Coral Parkway, you see it gets into the CRA. So let me tell you, there is no funding from the CRA. This is a citywide funded project through transportation and stormwater and utilities. Nothing comes from the CRA, but there is some benefit within the CRA. We have those alleys highlighted in the slide. They're what we call section 7, 6, 7, and 8 of our project. We're doing some, as needed, some drainage improvements. And you're going to see that happening in within the CRA area. Those 4 portions of alleys being completed within the next couple of weeks. Okay, so this is just an informational item. Again, this is not a CRA sponsored project, but is improving infrastructure within the CRA.
Thank you. Any comments?
Any questions?
Nope. Okay, moving on. Item 10C is a letter of support for a 2023 US DOT Protect grant application for the Cape Coral Parkway Resiliency Planning Study. Staff, hello.
All right, good afternoon, Madam Chair, Commissioners. My name is Matthew Grambo. I'm the Special Projects Coordinator in the City Manager's Office. This afternoon, staff are formally requesting a letter of support for an upcoming grant application that we're currently finalizing. It's for the US DOT Protect grant opportunity. It's one of the many grant opportunities that we're starting to see announced by the federal government as a result of the bipartisan infrastructure bill, as well as the Inflation Reduction Act. The city, not the CRA, it'll be a city grant application, is requesting approximately $550,000 to complete a corridor resiliency planning study for Cape Coral Parkway. And we think that a letter of support from the CRA would help boost our competitiveness in this federally competitive grant opportunity. So I'm going to have Laura Dodd, our principal planner in the Public Works Transportation Division, come up and be able to answer some questions and provide a brief overview of the grant application. We have a template letter of support in your backup material, as well as the current draft of the grant application, which is due on August 18th. So thank you very much in advance for your support, and I'll bring up Laura to talk about the project.
Good afternoon. For the record, Laura Dodd. Thank you for your time today to discuss this very important application. What this is an application to Protect grant, which stands for Promoting Resilient Operations for Transformative, Efficient, and Cost-Saving Transportation. And what that means, essentially, the purpose for this is to strengthen surface transportation facilities to be more resilient to extreme weather scenarios, which may include sea level rise, flooding, drought, and heat impacts. The grant also seeks to incorporate multimodal improvements and green infrastructure as solutions. So what we are proposing with this grant is a comprehensive study to evaluate the efficiency of the stormwater infrastructure, integration of smart system traffic signals and technologies, examine the provision for multimodal improvements, and also a cohesive landscaping plan throughout the corridor. As Matt mentioned, the application is approximately $550,000, and the duration of the study is anticipated to be 18 months. The study will accommodate any existing comprehensive plan or strategic goal items as to not conflict with them, and also incorporate any ongoing studies. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Two questions. One, Matt previously mentioned that this grant, how it was set up, was it simply because of the funding we were only able to select one major arterial roadway and none of the others through the city? In other words, how did Cape Coral Parkway get selected and other roadways didn't?
Sure, so that is an excellent question. So the rationale for selecting Cape Coral Parkway is it has defined boundaries which hit the criteria very well to align with the grant. The location of Cape Coral Parkway and having previously documented, unfortunately recently documented issues with extreme events have allowed us to have viable pertinent information for this grant to make it more competitive.
All right, and then the second part of my question is, you read a lot, 4 really good points that I thought, because I'm thinking, normally when you do a study like that, you're dealing with flooding or turn movements or just capacity issues. But you read a lot of stormwater and flooding, smart tech, multimodal, and then landscaping. I thought, interesting. Kind of parlays to my earlier question is, do you think from this study we may be able to get certain design standards and ideas that while we learned them from Cape Coral Parkway studies, we can now apply them to, Del Prado, to, certain parts of road. Because I'm thinking like Veterans and Pine Island don't really, even Burnstory, it doesn't reflect that urban, as you're going through that. But we've got a lot of roadways that do, especially when I'm thinking as you go down the major north-south ones, whereas we build out, they're gonna become more and more pressed for all four of the reasons that you just discussed. 'Cause, they're built to a prior standard, but to a certain point, 2030 is gonna get here quick, and then 2040, and then you see our ability to build out to, what are we, a little over 200,000, maybe 400 when we're further along. So that's a really interesting study. When do you think that will be started then?
So the application is due August 18th, and it will take several months for them to award. Off the top of my head, I believe by the end of the year, maybe a rational time frame. I have not specifically seen when they are going to announce the reward, or the award rather, for the grant, but I would anticipate by the end of the year.
So it is a competitive where we may not get anything, or we may be an award winner?
It is a competitive grant, a discretionary grant, so there is an option for them not to award us anything, but it's a discretionary grant. If I may touch on your item relating to the landscaping, it's always a good moment for me when I can see someone already visualizing the blooming of one plan into reality. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Do you need a motion?
Yeah,
I'll make that
we
motion
do.
to approve this grant application.
Second.
Now, do we direct somebody to write this letter of support?
It's already written.
Oh.
Matt, isn't it the last page of the agenda packet? I think you've got a template in there.
Yes, correct. The template letter support's pretty much ready to go, but you could direct a member of the board to adjust as needed and sign, and then return it to the city manager's office.
We're good. Thank you. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Here, can I confirm who made the second? Sorry.
Pardon?
Was it Slaughter? Thank you.
Me?
Thank you. All right. Biondi,
Aye.
Brantley,
Aye.
Gebhardt,
Aye.
Keim,
Aye.
Slaughter,
Aye.
5 ayes, motion carried.
Thank you. Okay, item 11, comments from the board. Let's start with Tom.
If I could, the city clerk, could you put that document, I have handed it out to everyone, and apologize, Jim, if you're listening from afar. But in our agenda, or actually in the agenda packet today, the city clerk included as part of the minutes, essentially the gist, if you want to put up just the first 7 real quick, just so I can reference them. Yeah, so what we did at the last meeting, I rattled off some ideas. My thought would be, I would love to see development in Cape Coral, and especially the CRA South Cape. In order to happen, I think 2 things could help that process. One would be we, as a collective board, but our leadership group, with the city, I think it'd be helpful, especially some of the changes we've had and the expected changes with 2 of our members leaving at the end of the fiscal year, with 2 new coming on board. So my thought was to identify 2 motions. One that would be simply just a one-day retreat for us to basically go through the rules, our ordinances, our history, the budget and planning, the infrastructure, economic development, special events, programming, and then lastly, even some way of including the greater stakeholders of the CRA area. So with that, I propose 2 simple motions. One would be, and I'll read it so Jim can follow along at home. Motion 1, direct staff to prepare a one-day leadership training program that will reflect education and overview topics identified by the leadership group. Provide a budget, schedule, venue, and an agenda for proposed training topics. So the idea would be we do a workshop to go through these items. And that would even include, I think, possibly some of the discussion we have because of these special events, of how we're doing them, some of the criteria. And then if there's support of that, then the second motion would be a little more ambitious, but we have time to build it. In fact, I think it would be foolish to go into an effort and not have a good consensus of what this board believes our job is, and more importantly, what some of the big issues out there. So with this one would be working with our new Sierra specialist, Michael, develop essentially a draft scope and a budget that would essentially look at updating our CRA plan. If you look at the history of the CRA plan from 2014, 2019, about every 5 years we've updated it and amended it. We would be on track with that, but we've also had a hurricane this past year. And even if we were on track, I think if we hadn't had the lesson of the hurricane, I think we might have missed certain things like hurricane tolerant community, being more resilient, essentially identifying, even from the Resilient Lee program, opportunities not just for mobility, but for mixed use, for multifamily residential within the CRA. And for that to happen, I think the best guide is let's update our plan. Let's, take a good hard look at our infrastructure planning. Like, I think of one example after the storm on 46 Lane, which is essentially behind a lot of the places, from Rossman Realty all the way up to, I think, Coronado, for about a month and a half. There was major vehicles out there doing work. And being familiar with some of what those costs are to bring in some of those high tech, I imagine that was a huge headache for the city on that one. And again, most of that problem was below the ground. It wasn't observable. And so one of the things that even our 47th beautification plan, and remember, it was before I was even on the CRA, and I'm already telling people about what it's about, that half of the value is below the ground. It's infrastructure you don't see, but you appreciate it, and you darn sure know when it doesn't work. So one of the things I think we would be, a good idea would be to put that together and put these two motions. So if there's support of that, I'll open up for your discussion.
Any discussion? Did you make your motions? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I definitely am open, more than open to having a meeting and kind of seeing where we're going and where we're coming from. I think that would probably be a very important one, especially before November, hopefully.
Yes?
I had asked you this earlier, this one-day training, would there be a fee? We talked about that we've been to conferences before, and do you have somebody in mind who would be in charge of organizing this outside of the city, like a guest speaker?
Do I?
Yeah.
No. Now, I've been through my career. I've been through a number of these. I've been through leadership courses. I was about to say they're not hard to do. They're not hard to do if you know what you're doing and what you're trying to get out of it. But in this particular case, they're not expensive. But yes, it will cost us, certainly minimally a half day of time. Certainly, if we do it right, there might be prep time. And I say that only because my own experience before I got on the board, the first thing I did was I went through the CRA ordinances, because there were several of them. I went through the plan, and I started to go through the budget and get a real good understanding of where we've come. And part of, I think, our effort needs to be is to memorialize some of our victories, but also realize we have a lot of unmet work that hasn't been established yet. And how would we effectively create the priorities to do that? So there's a number of companies out there that do this kind of work, leadership training, but more importantly, for us, it's really an opportunity to go through our own homework and decide what do we want to do next? Where's the real ambitions coming from? And more importantly, how do we tie it into our budget? Because most budget will be long-term. They won't simply be one and done annually, but they may require, investment over a period of time.
I don't have a problem with it, but I think it should be geared more to the people who replace us.
Well, again, I disagree only because it's not just for us five. It's for our ex officio. It's for our city manager, who's our executive director. It's for a new CRA specialist. And then today, we've seen about 4 or 5 key staff member, and they're at every meeting. So one of the things I want to do is have an opportunity is, as we're talking, is how do you want to see reports? What type of information, because we all have different ideas, but we can't express them to each other until we come to this meeting. So one of the things that this lets us do is in a less informal, talk about some of those issues. Most leadership retreats aren't all, holding hands and kumbaya. Sometimes they're real, let's hit the road with some real issues, let's resolve them. Some cases you can't, but at least it lets you walk away with knowing where you agree on from a board as a consensus, where you can push.
If I may, when we became CRA, we were an advisory board prior to becoming commissioners. And as an advisory board, we had a former employee who was our liaison to the city, and we had a workshop, and it explained most of what you're asking for us to go to a workshop. And I don't think you actually need, like, the state puts on a big conference and you go to different sessions where they have different meetings, and this would be like a small scale version of that. But I think what you're asking is for people to be trained in what we should be looking at, what we should be doing, how the CRA is different from the city, what the district land development and all that, how it's different from the city. And as you see here, we have all our department heads and everybody is here doing these wonderful things. And perhaps you just need an afternoon workshop for people going out, people coming in. It might be a good idea to have it for your new CRA commissioners and the ones who have been. It's kind of like with the council. The council has 4 years, but they overlap. There's 2 years and then it's 2 years. So everybody has the old and the new mixed. If you wait until November when Janice and I are done, and then have your workshop to explain to the newbies, this is what we've done, this is what we're looking to do, it might be a better solution than to spend a couple of days or even a day at a workshop where we're paying somebody who might not know anything about what we've done prior. That's just my opinion. Anybody else? Anyone else?
Well, I think I just kind of, we had something in place, and to me it was an ethical responsibility to follow the adopted rules, and we didn't do that today. So I guess I'm kind of more of a negative Nelly right now, and I don't see, if we meet and we just make these decisions and then we don't abide by them, then I don't understand what's the purpose of it, I guess. But that's me. So.
All right, with that, I'd like to make a motion then. Motion 1, direct staff to prepare a one-day leadership training program that will reflect education and overview topics identified by the leadership group. Provide a budget, schedule, venue, and an annotated agenda of proposed training topics, period. And I'd like a second.
And is there a date on that? Are we talking before?
No, in fact, the idea would be, obviously, when I talked about it with Janice and Ms. Bondi leaving, the idea would be, no, we wouldn't do this until we're fully assembled.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Biondi?
Aye.
Brantley?
Aye.
Gebhardt?
Aye.
Keim?
Aye.
Slaughter?
Aye.
5 ayes, motion carried.
And again, second item 2, this would be obviously after any type of leadership training, group session would be direct staff to prepare a scope of service and budget line item for the development and updating of the South Cape Community Redevelopment Plan, period. The scope of services will guide staff in developing funding and policy program considerations for the annual budget.
So you made that motion, we need a second.
And is that something we should vote on now, or is that something that we should vote on after the
I
other
would
meeting?
think probably after your little training session. That
Again,
would be
I
my
disagree.
idea.
This idea is to really let the city manager work with his new CRA specialist. To update a plan takes much longer than most people will realize. They will be doing stuff behind the scenes. This will be a staff impact. So that's why I thought I absolutely want a motion. You know, let's not walk into this blindly, because in other words, the last thing I want to do is a poor plan or just go through an effort. We have no value in that. In fact, one of the comments made about why we would need it is, how many of you with confidence, when somebody says, hey, what's going on in CRA, different projects, you can actually proactively explain what's happening, not projects, but development projects. Most of the time, no, it's reactive. We're sitting back, you know, certainly some of our effort was reaction from a storm, rebuilding. But some of our programs in terms of resiliency, mixed use housing, these B2B, these are brand new programs that we haven't contemplated at all. How do we want to put that into our planning structure? Because a plan is really what you're going to do, but it's also a full admission of what we're not going to do and maybe why. Because again, it's about setting strategic priorities. So that's kind of my opinion. But thanks, Greg.
What do you think, Greg?
If, yeah, if you guys are good with it, then yeah, second.
Madam City Clerk, call the roll.
Biondi,
Aye.
Brantley,
Aye.
Gebhardt,
Aye.
Heim,
Aye.
Slaughter,
Aye.
5 ayes, motion carried.
Okay, thank you, Tom. You put a lot of effort into that. All right, comments from the board. Greg, go ahead.
I don't think I have anything. I think this was a little bit more of an uncomfortable meeting, but I think it was a productive one for sure.
Janice?
I'm going to ask again. What's the status? I know Grant isn't, Damon's not here, of the cameras down in South Cape. I know when we met in June, he said that he had something in the works, and I didn't know if 2 months later if they're up and running. He said that they whatever he had ordered had come in.
I will get you an update because, yeah, they're
Okay.
working with the materials.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. And then, you got an answer, Maureen?
I do.
Okay.
The IT director actually informed me today that they have a PO issued to a vendor to repair the cameras and the Wi-Fi access points on 47th Terrace. There is a kickoff meeting next week, and they don't have the exact date, but they're expecting that by the end of September, everything will be up and running as it should be.
Okay, and while you're up, what's the status? I know we were talking about doing the videos, and you had sent me an email in June.
Sarah Newcomb from our Office of Communications is going to come up to talk to that.
Good evening. My name is Sarah. I am the marketing specialist for the Office of Communications. We actually did the reel previously for your social media page, and we have a few other videos that are in the works. We are going to be working with Michael here and training him on how to do reels. I think that one thing that would be helpful would be to try to compile a list, and maybe that's something Michael can work on, but a list of people in the CRA who would be interested in being filmed, because that was one issue that we ran into. Some were not interested or weren't ready, and some may not be ready still after the storm, so it might be something to look into before then. But we will work with Michael and get some videos together and get them posted.
Right, we were talking about doing like one on special events, like you just did 4th of July, bike night, something like that.
Yep.
And then we were talking about maybe some of the restaurants and then maybe some of the nightlife. And I had made the comment earlier that I would like to see that some people have larger followings on their Facebook page, and if they're in it even for a second, like that one that we did, you know, I shared it on a lot of pages, the businesses shared it, you know, they got 50,000 people on their page. It really got out there that we were open for business in South Cape, and that's kind of my big thing, is that I want recognition for the CRA, whether we're a sponsor for the grant. That's why, you know, I think almost for like the first time since I've been on the board that we were actually getting something. And I think the videos, if we help get them out there and we target certain businesses that have a big following, that they would, I would think, would want to do it.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Actually, we're working with economic development right now as well, and we're doing weekly postings of just a picture of the business, and just tagging them is a huge difference. So that could be something that you could do as well in addition to the videos.
Right,
But
those
the
were my
videos,
ideas that I had suggested before, you know, to do different things like that.
Yep.
Thank you. That's it.
Jim? Jim, do you have any comments? All right, we'll come back to you. I have a few things. I would like an update on when the pipes and all the construction materials on Cape Coral Street and Lafayette Street and Miramar, that one big field there by the Monkey Bar, and also the ones behind Nice Guys, if and when they're all going to be moved at some point, because it's really kind of messy back there. And I also worry about, I know it's only August, but November's coming up quick. And our staging area, even though we're expanding it for the parade, we still have a lot of kids and a lot of people in that area, and I want it to be safe. So I would like an update on that. 47th Terrace between Coronado and Palm Tree is a driving nightmare. There is one spot on the street that's, if you drive your car in there, you're probably going to need shock absorbers because you go way down. It's a big dip. And I ride that street almost daily, and I think it needs to be adjusted. It needs to be repaved, and it just needs to be fixed. Hello.
Excuse me, are you talking 47 west of Coronado?
Yes, between Coronado
That
and
is part
Palm
of a bigger utility projects, so the pavement that you see there is temporary.
Yes.
They're gonna fix it, and I believe they were waiting for certain parts that they need for their project, and by, I think it's October, is when they're expecting getting the parts and fixing the pavement.
Okay, at least we have a goal, okay. The medians on Palm Tree Boulevard, I know we've talked about this before. We have people who live off Palm Tree Boulevard who pay TIF money to us, and we're going to have a beautiful development at the Bimini Basin, and across the street, it's not going to look very nice because of the way it appears now. I don't understand why, if you can cut the grass in the medians, you explained it to us at the last meeting, that we only have enough people to do weed whacking, but I still believe that we have money in our budget now, we certainly do, and it shouldn't all go to the businesses that are paying our taxes to support our CRA. I think, and now that we're not going to buy the clock, we have $34,000 to perhaps hire a couple of people for a short time to weed whack. They need to be prettied up a little bit, if that's how you want to say it. Also, where the golf course used to be, that property overgrows onto the right-of-way on Palm Tree Boulevard, and it's sinful what it looks like. So I would really appreciate if we could get some kind of an estimate or an update on how that can be taken care of. If we're trying to eliminate blight, those are two things that are really a problem, I feel. Let's see, what else have I got here? I have a few things. 47th, the pipes, the medians. With the economic incentives that we're giving and the $1 million that we found, can't we put some of that money into taking care of these items? I just feel like we should be able to spend the money for some of the issues that we have in the residential area of the CRA. So I would just like to have some kind of an update, some kind of a why we can't or why we can, or at some point, can we do it? And other than that, I'd like to welcome Michael, and I think, how many more meetings do we have, Janice?
September, October, November.
Okay, that's all I have. Anybody else?
They're going to be doing cartwheels.
I know, they're going to say hallelujah. Jim, do you have any comments? I think we lost.
I have none.
No? Okay, thank you. Michael?
So, one of the things that I'm gonna be working on, Michael, with is what are the items that, how we get information flowing to you. So let's start with some of these update questions. So, what I do in a different role for the city, when a board member asks for information, that information is provided to the board member who asked for it, and we also, I have my staff provide that information to everybody else. I intend on working with Michael to have the same policy for the CRA board. So when you ask for, hey, I want to update on the utilities project, we're going to write it down on the list. If we can't provide it during the meeting, Michael will go back and work with utility staff to get an outline of that project, when it's supposed to be complete, when the area will be restored. He'll report that there's a dip in the road that they may need a little bit more asphalt to level out. And then when he responds back with that information, it will go to you, but it will also go to everybody else. This way you all have all the information that is requested at the same time. So we will get you responses to those things, and if there's anything that needs attention, cutting back trees from the golf course, to free up a sidewalk, we'll make sure all that happens. In addition to, doing some of the desk work, some of the other things I'd like for Mike to do is to actually get out of the office down there, which is why I want the position down in the CRA, so that, an hour or two a day, he could be, walking Lafayette, another hour or two walking Country Club, walk Palm Tree, walk 47th, walk Del Prado, and just put together, some things that, obviously some of it's going to be bigger issues that need budget and funding, but there may be some small items like this, like just addressing trimming back trees, and hey, there's a pothole or a dip. I mean, that's some of the things that I think that we've lost or we've missed moving the previous position out of this South Cape. So, the plan is to get him back down there, and anything that you all need, don't wait till the board meetings. I mean, the idea, stop by the office, give them a call, and let's get the information flowing a little more fluidly than maybe it has been prior to today. So, don't be a stranger. He's here. He's working for all of you. Okay.
Okay.
I'm
sorry.
I'll have him send over an email with the contact information. And the office hours of when he'll be over there, and everything that you'll need to know.
Okay, I have one other thing. We got notice that the Florida Redevelopment Agency's conference is coming up in October. You usually have to register for that in advance. I think I sent, I think it was you and Maureen. I sent the email that I received. So it's in, yeah, it's a pretty beach area. It's nice. Anyway, so I think we should consider that as something we could all attend. There was a wealth of information that we got the last time we were able to attend. We split up, we went to the different sessions so that we could all get all the information, because a lot of the sessions that you want to attend, they overlap. So if Greg went to one and I went to one, Janice went to one, at the end of the day, when we were sitting back regrouping, we shared that information. And it's very informative. It tells you a lot of good information. And the best part is you start to network with other CRA people and get ideas from them as to what you can and can't do, how they're improving things, et cetera. So it's a good conference, and it's in the end of October. I can't remember.
Did they have a trade show too?
October 25th through the 27th in Punta Vedra Beach at the Sawgrass Marriott.
Yeah, it should be really, really good. And yeah, they had a trade show. They had all kinds of information.
That was my question. I know the city of Cape Coral was involved. I think the city of Fort Myers had a booth. Maybe that's something Mike might want
To have a booth?
Didn't we have? Well, there
We
was a
did
lot-
not have a
We did not
booth,
have a
no.
booth, but there was a lot of people that did have a booth. I don't know if
Right.
that would be a good marketing
For us?
or not.
I would suggest that we just go and peruse what booths are there, what information we can gather. We got information on, the last one I attended, we had information on different decor for the area, if you would. Got information on brownfields, which I found very interesting. All kinds of information to bring back, and we brought back a lot of good things. So it's just something I thought we should start thinking about. It's August and the conference is October. So that's all I have. Anybody else? Yes.
Well, let me start off by saying all mistakes are mine. And we had a miscommunication between my staff and one of the items on the board agenda today. In new business, items 9C and 9D were meant to be informational only. 9B, the demolition incentive program, we were looking for the board to approve that program so that we could begin to announce it and move that program forward.
Do you want to do that now? We can.
I would like to ask you all if you would approve it. The reasoning behind that is that time is money for the private sector, and real people have decisions to make with buildings that they have that either need to be reinvested in or knocked down. And to some of them have been speaking with me directly on this, and to make them wait for a later date. I think it's just a little bit unfair to approve
So
money.
on 9B, are you looking for then a motion that the development incentive that Ms. Woodbury presented be supported, approved, or what?
Yes, that it would be approved, and if you have any alterations or discussions that you want, if you don't want the certain dollar amount, or if you have an issue with the technical assistance aspect, then provide guidance or not, make a motion to, but what my recommendation would be to, we've looked at kind of the size of buildings that are down there, we've gotten information on demolition costs, so we've looked at what are the needs about people who, don't have the technical assistance, so we tried to put it together to give business owners and property owners a real chance at making a decision on whether or not to to take that step and to demolish.
Well, yeah, in my level of comfort, it so mirrors the prior work that's been done, the last half a year now, from the idea concept to now, the reality. With that, I'd make a motion on 9B that we approve the demolition incentive program as presented in our agenda packet.
We need a second?
I'll second it. Mike, I have a question.
Yes.
They had put in there something about 4 months, right? Was it 4 months? Is that going to be a fair amount of time for them to go through this process with permitting and stuff?
Yeah, you're supposed to have, when you submit this in the program program guidelines, that it's supposed to be done within 4 months of being awarded. So the idea is that if you submit for a demolition program similar to our Breaking Barriers to Business, you're either submitting for the technical assistance where you need more help, or you're just submitting for, I need money. And in that one, you have to supply us with three proposals. So they should have already contacted 3 companies and, been down that road.
But we know how slow things move, right? And I don't know, is there that many companies that demolish in the area? Or is that I guess I'm asking, is that a fair enough time? Is that enough time for them to do what you need them to do for them to be reimbursed?
I wouldn't have proposed it if I didn't think it was
Okay.
a fair enough time.
All right, that's it.
It's 120 days. The real decision for the owner really is the incentive of getting money to support knocking it down worth their investment in either turning the property or combining it or figuring out a joint venture with the neighbor who has a vacant piece of property. This is just going to help them in the decision-making process. I think once they make that decision, it's coming down.
She's got something to say.
If I could just add, Matt just informed me that demolition permits are being issued in 16 days.
Oh, good.
So that's helpful to know. And also, if they don't have all of the documents or information that we require, it's just not a complete application. They have to have the demolition done 4 months after the award is made. So if it's not ready, we just don't make the award until they have everything in place.
Just want to make sure it was fair times. So thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
I second the motion.
Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Biondi?
Aye.
Brantley?
I think we lost him.
Aye.
Gebhardt?
Aye.
Klein?
Aye.
Slaughter?
Aye.
5 ayes, motion carried.
Thank you for your understanding on that. I apologize for the miscommunication, but thank you. And we will begin to announce that and hopefully see some decisions and some blighted buildings coming down in the future with this.
Awesome.
Then you're also looking at 9D as well?
No.
Oh, it was just 9B. I thought you had said B
Just
and D.
9B, yes. 9A, the sponsorships needed a vote, and 9B, C and D were just informational.
Well, yeah, and even D, it's going to Planning Commission as a recommendation and then council to.
Okay. Anything else? Time and place of future meetings. The next regular meeting of the CRA is scheduled for Tuesday, September 5th at 3 o'clock in council chambers. Can we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all.